So there have been a lot of recent medical reports about patients with COVID-19, especially severe COVID-19, that are forming blood clots in their blood vessels. Why is this? Well, a recent report might help to shed some light on this matter. This report came out in Science Translational Medicine in November of 2020 and was conducted by researchers from the University of Michigan, from the Shanghai Jiao Tong University School of Medicine in Shanghai, China, and from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute in Bethesda, Maryland. The title of this paper is Prothrombotic Autoantibodies in Serum from Patients Hospitalized with COVID-19. What does this mean? Well, autoantibodies are antibodies that you make against yourself, against your own tissues. And prothrombotic means making clots form. So essentially, there are these antibodies that are in COVID-19 patients that might cause clots to form. I'm going to talk about the data in this paper by first talking about a little bit about blood clots and autoantibodies, then talking about this concept called neutrophil nets, and then transitioning to the paper and talking about what happens in some COVID-19 patients. So what are blood clots? Blood clots are basically collections of blood cells and other blood proteins that can prevent normal blood flow. So here on the left, you see that in a healthy vessel, the blood is flowing pretty evenly and smoothly throughout the vessel. However, on the right here, you can see that there's a blood clot blocking some of the vessel. And so the blood has to flow around this in an area with a more narrow diameter, and this can cause more resistance to blood flow. In a really severe case, the blood clot can plug up parts of the vessel so that the tissue that's downstream of these blood vessels doesn't get enough oxygen and get damaged and even can die. Now, one reason for blood clots are autoantibodies. So normally, when let's say you're infected with a virus or a bacteria, you have antibodies that are produced by your body to neutralize these pathogens and help you to recover. Unfortunately, sometimes you can make antibodies against yourself. So against your own cells or against maybe proteins that are found in your blood. And this happens in a number of circumstances. So some autoimmune diseases like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis have antibody, or rather autoantibody formation. Some viruses can provoke this, like HIV and hepatitis C, and some infections like urinary tract infections are also associated with these autoantibodies. So these researchers looked at patients hospitalized with COVID-19 and looked for the presence of these autoantibodies. And they found that in 172 patients that they studied, more than half, or 52%, had some sort of autoantibody in their blood. And these autoantibodies were correlated with decreased kidney function. Now, to understand how these autoantibodies might be causing blood clots, we need to briefly talk about neutrophil nets. A neutrophil net is a neutrophil extracellular trap. That's what NET stands for. So basically, you have these neutrophils, which are your white blood cells, or a type of white blood cell, and they spew out their DNA, and this can trap bacteria and other pathogens and prevent them from spreading throughout the rest of your body. So this is a defense mechanism that your body has when fighting bacteria. However, nets can also help blood clots to form. And the researchers, were thinking, well, maybe if these patients form autoantibodies, maybe they can also form these neutrophil nets. And so what they did in this experiment in a laboratory dish is they took neutrophils from healthy individuals, and then they mixed them with serum from either COVID, or rather they mixed them with serum from COVID patients that either didn't have or did have these autoantibodies. So take a look at the top here. In this experiment, you have healthy neutrophils that are mixed with the serum from COVID patients without the autoantibodies. And you can see that the neutrophils look pretty happy and normal. On the other hand, when they mix these neutrophils with autoantibodies from these COVID patients, what you can see is the formation of these nets that are shown by this green dye here. So these autoantibodies seem to promote net formation. And We know that autoantibodies, or rather that nets, can sometimes also help blood clots to form. So it seems that perhaps these patients with COVID-19 that have autoantibodies have this net formation in their blood, and then that can cause blood clots to form. To look into this a bit further, the scientists then turned to an animal model, a mouse model. And what they did is that they injected these mice with either normal antibodies from control patients or with autoantibodies from COVID patients. And then they stimulated the blood vessels of the mice to form clots. So take a look at the right here. On the left of this panel, you have the blood clots that formed in these mice when they were injected with control antibodies. And here you can see a clot that's formed from these mice when they were injected with these COVID and autoantibodies. And so these clots you can see are much bigger. And in fact, if you measure a bunch of them, you can, or rather, let me talk about one thing first. The reason that the clots have this interesting shape is, remember that they're inside of blood vessels. So they're sort of elongated. And now when the scientists measured many of these clots, they found that on average, they were longer and heavier than the control clots. So this, again, gives evidence that there's something about these autoantibodies from these COVID patients that are helping these really big clots to form. Okay, so the recap here is that autoantibodies are found in these hospitalized COVID patients, meaning antibodies against the patient's own tissue, and these antibodies might cause blood clots to form in these patients. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for joining me, and please check out my videos released every Friday, and please subscribe. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.